creation. And that's where I think the beauty of God comes in. I think that there is a wonderful danger in God that we have totally forgotten. Because one of the things that humanoids like to do is they like to bring in the tamers, the theology tamers, to tame their deities down. They don't like the idea of a wild God, because it could get very awkward and deeply embarrassing. So the respectability of theology, confession, all the rest of it comes in and makes the God nice and palatable. The colours are inevitably pastels. The music is nice and low, like the schlocky music that you hear in supermarkets. And that could be just the odd little beep when you realise, God, there is a God somewhere out there behind the whole thing. And one of the reasons that so-called young people, which are a strange kind of species anyway, are leaving religion is that because God has died for them, or become incredibly boring and uninteresting. And I think that one of the tasks of our time for those who are interested in God is to make God dangerous again. And the best person I know who does that is the fellow I was talking about in Oxford this morning, is Meister Eckhart, the 13th, 14th century mystic. He is unbelievable, just unbelievable. And I'll end up by just telling you a couple of things about him. One thing he said is, nothing in the universe resembles God so much as silence. Nothing in the universe resembles God so much as silence. Then he says, God is that wilderness in which each one is alone. He also says, and this is lovely about yourself, I think one of the greatest gifts that anyone can have is a contented heart. I think no one else can give it to you. But you can have all the world has to give. But if you're not contented in your heart, it's only tormenting you and making you completely kind of miserable. And there is, I believe you don't have to get a peaceful mind or a contented heart. I think there is a native tranquility within each of us that's already there. And through quieting your mind and your heart, you can slip right down into it. But one of the things, like in Ireland, when you'd ask somebody a question, you'd rarely get a straight answer. Do you know that kind of way? Be going around a bit, around, like you'd be saying, how are you doing? Sure, I'm not too bad. How are you? Sure, I was often worse. Then it kind of goes, no information has been communicated. It's true, like, we're experts at this. Dancing. But, like, when I went to America first giving talks, Jesus, I got an awful shock. Because I suddenly discovered if you put too much sincerity into the question, how are you? You could unleash a biography in seconds. You get levels of information that you'd be wondering if their partner even knew this. And it's just always struck me, Jesus, I'd be saying to myself, why would I'd be cringing, like, getting this. And then you'd often be sitting in old workshop things, like, and you'd say to someone, who are you? So they tell you what's called telling your story. This is coming to Ireland now too. It's probably in England as well. So you tell your story. What's your story? So you give your story. And you'd often be sitting in a group of people maybe with a woman with a really interesting face. And you'd say, God, she's an amazing face. And then you'd hear her coming out with a cliched, second-rate version of a story about herself that would put cornflakes to sleep. And you'd be saying to yourself, Jesus, how is she on something? Like, is she on automatic? Like, this kind of, totally. And what often happens, you see, is that people reduce identity to biography. And if they have a story, or if they think of telling the story, then that's who I actually am. But in actual fact, your identity is infinitely more complex, nuanced, sophisticated and mysterious than your biography, or than anything that could ever unfold in your biography. And part of what I'm saying this afternoon is that one of your duties, which only you can do, is to imagine yourself. You're not simply there. You don't look in the mirror and it looks back at you and it says, John, 34523, blood cell, bum, bum, bum. Tells you nothing about who you are. There used to be a Zen monk who used to go to the mirror each morning when he got up, and he'd say to the mirror, "Who are you?" Then he'd look again in the mirror and he'd say, "Who are you?" Then he'd look in the mirror a third time and he'd say, "Who are you?" Then he'd wink at the mirror and he'd say, "Well, whoever you are, don't let them fool you today." Because the who question is the really magic question about who you are. And the point I'm making is no one else can tell you that but yourself. And if you don't have a sense of that, then you're on sand and not on ground. And I think one of the beautiful things about a relationship with God is that it gives you your own ground. Like when I was a child at home, people would say, standing up for yourself, the way it was put was, they'd say, stand your ground. Stand your ground. Or when you meet somebody who has no grounding at all, they're like a personal domesticated vortex. You feel if you came too near them that you'd actually go like straight in. And it's lovely and so wholesome then to meet someone who can stand on their own ground and who is themselves. It's just really because you can trust someone who is themselves. Whereas somebody who's picking a bit of pastiche out of a bit of pastiche there and a bit here and a couple of sentences from the latest lingo and showing you a face, you don't know whether you're standing in front of a lioness of Malaysia or a mystic from Connemara. You haven't a clue. So part of integrity is to imagine yourself honourably. And integrity is also related to integrated. That the different complex dimensions within yourself have the invitation and the possibility of coming together and meeting each other. And I think that the beauty of belief in God is that your concept of God should be feisty and imaginative and rich enough to incorporate all the hungers of your heart. An awful lot of people are going around, with the concept of God that they learned at 10 or 11. Everything else in their life has grown, and their little concept of God is like something out of a lucky bag. And it's so awful, especially fundamentalist stuff. It's just unbelievable when people get tar macadam put inside to lay down the autobahn for the fundamentalist thing.